Oh, started recording, I see. Okay. Um,
Mm.
should I guess we could start, and then when Mr. Meralda is ready, he can join in. Um, so good evening. Welcome to our virtual LACE committee meeting. Um, we will jump right into the agenda, which I just need to pull up. Gil keeps going with her camera here. I believe the first topic was going through the New Jersey School Board's Capital Watch. Um, I'm pulling up my agenda as we speak. It's been a hectic week in my family. So, anyway, this is a document that New Jersey School Boards recently started, which focuses specifically on bills that are being moved around in the legislature. And so this one is their winter 2025. It's not really so much a document as it is a website, but it lists a lot of the different bills that can affect education and school districts in various ways. And so I figured it would be sort of just good for us to go through it and see if there are any that we wanted to highlight and focus on and sort of reach out to our legislators about either supporting or if we have concerns about. Did everyone see that link that's on there? Okay. Um, So the first one is one that we've talked about, at length, which was the S 2837 A 4084. And this is the one that uh, allows districts to put out a question during special elections for additional spending. Um, and then if you go further down, I think it's like three or four down, there's A2784 and S2548, which is the one that we would really like. I'm getting the phone call from the district. The one that we would really like to see moved forward. I do not believe there has been any movement on that since we spoke to our legislators about it in July. And I think that it's something that's sort of important to understand the difference between, which, I know we explained to our legislators when they had visited us in July. But I wonder if it's worth also reaching out to the Senate Education Committee and Assembly Education Committee to explain the concern with that. Does anyone have any thoughts on this stuff?
I mean, they did put through that the other bill, the first one that we just talked about, I don't have the screen open in front of me. The one that allowed the elections to be moved back to November. Um, right? Is that the one we're talking about?
Right. They did not put that one through, I believe. They
Wait,
they put through
which
the
they no, sorry, the separate proposals for additional spending. That's the one that they
Yes,
put through,
yes.
mm,
right? Yes.
right.
Um, I mean, we certainly can reach out. I know, I just don't know if they feel like they're at their capacity with moving things around
Right.
anymore.
I guess like from my understanding, I don't really understand where the negative would come in for this bill because there are already districts that are allowed to put additional proposals on the November ballot. So it's not like it's not allowed. It's just a matter of allowing it for the future instead of the current year. Um, I'm just not totally sure if we're not explaining that well enough, and maybe how many other districts have been affected by that same type of situation. Um, so I don't remember if they gave us the reason for why this wasn't moving forward, except to say that there was a similar bill that was being moved instead. But there are there's very small differences, but they're important differences, I guess. Um, so I think that, whether or not we need this for, this year, next year, but I think it's a good tool to have in the tool belt for the future for, every district. And so maybe that's something that we, speak about if we, get a meeting with anyone from the education committee at the state level. I don't think it does them any harm, and I don't think that and I think there's only benefit to it, but there might just be something I'm not seeing. So,
I don't think it hurts to keep them abreast of what we think about the matters that you're talking about
mm,
and keep insisting on to them that we are very concerned about these things or we're in favor or not in favor. So I don't think it's going to hurt us, or it might help us to
mm,
just continue to keep after them. That's just my opinion. I mean, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So if we keep bringing it up and saying we're concerned or we approve or we don't, what's wrong with that? That's just my opinion.
right. Um, and school board NJSBA says that they support it as well. So,
Yes, they do. Yeah.
I think that, it's definitely something that I can bring up at the legislative committee, but supporting it doesn't necessarily mean advocating for it.
Right.
So as we've learned, those are two very different things. Um,
Maybe hit up Senator Gopal again.
right. Yeah, I actually had wanted along the lines of this topic for the meeting to sort of just talk about our recent advocacy discussions with our, state representatives, without, necessarily going into too much detail because I don't want it to take up, too much time of the meeting.
But
But
Senator Gopal at the end of the meeting the other day said he would like to come down and sit down with Monroe administrators because he wants to find out and talk to us about the uniqueness of Monroe Township by what you and I both said at that meeting, Kate.
yeah.
So I think we need to invite him down. He seems to be a strong proponent, even though he's from Monmouth,
Mhm.
for all these issues going on. And
Right.
he even said he said the word, the uniqueness of Monroe Township.
Mm-hmm.
He'd like to talk to us about it. So I
Right.
think we need to invite him to come down and give him more knowledge and better knowledge of what's going on here. So
Right.
Would you
Yeah.
like me to, do you prefer to do it through the board? President Fabiano, would you like me to go ahead and reach out to make the communication with him and set up a time? Whatever you'd like me to do, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, I definitely think that we should start opening lines of communication. I know, so this was a New Jersey school boards meeting that we were on. And Kate and Gail had asked him a question, and when he responded, I believe it was to Kate,
yes,
he
yes,
had mentioned something that Dr. Higgins from the high school, that he has been in communication with Dr.
yes,
Higgins from the high school because apparently they know each other. And he said that he would like to um, meet with us to learn more about, Monroe and, what our needs are in our situation. So the the line of communication seems to have been opened.
hmm,
And I
yep,
definitely think that we should try to seize that opportunity. I will also reach out to Senator Greenstein as well to keep her um,
Mm.
in the loop. I don't obviously want to exclude her if we're going
no,
to be
keep,
setting up a
yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
So I would reach out to her as well so that, we can set up a joint meeting with both of them. Because ultimately we would love for them to be able to collaborate to help us in any way that they can.
yeah.
Right.
That's
So
great.
I
You
will
can't,
go
yeah.
out. I
Go
will
ahead.
go ahead and I'll reach out to Dr. Higgins and ask where he's at with it. And
Hmm.
then we could set something up and then I'll reach out to you, Katie, so that we could have that conversation as you reach out to the senator.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
maybe we can invite him to February. Oh, this is February. Wow. The
March.
March least meeting. And obviously we can always be flexible if needed, or if he'd rather have a conversation, that's, you know, I guess just more, at a different time, we can always talk about that as well.
I
Um,
think you have to go according to his timeline because it was
Yep.
very hard to get him on that night for that Zoom meeting that we had. So maybe whenever
right.
that gentleman has time, we should just work around it, try to blend in Linda Greenstein, and let's just go whatever time he gives us.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
will
we could
say
change.
that,
We don't need to worry about it being on a
yeah,
committee day. If it doesn't
No,
work for them, we'll change ours.
right.
yes,
Absolutely.
that's what I'm saying. Change in
Absolutely.
order to accommodate.
And
Yes.
I know he
Yep.
also had attended another county meeting that same week, but he's obviously very supportive of education in general.
Mhm.
I did ask him about his statement regarding the funding being withdrawn from districts that do not have full day kindergarten. He said that there's no plan to do that. It's more about working with all of the districts that don't currently have it to see how it can be accomplished.
He also said he was not supportive of an unfunded mandate.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
I think that's very
Anything,
important to know,
yeah,
because right
anything
now,
unfunded. Yeah.
yes, right now, what we're hearing is the mandate is just being put out there. It's not a funded mandate, so to speak. So he said that he would not also support anything that was not funded.
Not, yes, because someone mentioned the cell phone issue, and they said that they have these pouches they buy for $30. Would that be funded? He said, I will support anything as long as it's funded. So he's on the right track.
Mhm.
So we could use his help.
Yeah, I really liked that he was open to
Yep.
taking any questions from anybody and answering them to the best of his ability. Like he definitely I appreciated that transparency, that he was willing to do that. And they kept saying, anyone else have questions, and I was like, I'm gonna try not to raise my hands again.
I was trying to mute you, Kate, but I didn't have the capability.
Nobody else was asking questions. Like, don't give me that window.
I had one question, but you just kept raising your hand. So
Yeah. Um, so along those lines, I also, and I did want to go through this Capital Watch a bit more, but I did want to share, and I don't know if Ms. Fabiano, you want to talk about it a little bit more, but we had a meeting last week with several state representatives from different departments. I'll let you talk about it a little.
Yeah, so we had our meeting, that was Thursday morning. Thursday was the day of meetings, but Thursday morning, we met with Senator Greenstein, Kevin Damer, who is the Commissioner of Education, and several other members from the DOE and the governor's office, to talk about the kindergarten mandate. We met for about an hour-ish. I would love to say it was a very positive, uplifting meeting, and we heard all of the great things that we wanted to see happen. We talked a little bit about funding, and the funding formula, how we'll be getting our numbers in the next couple of weeks. We're hopeful that we might see a little something, maybe, we don't know. But it wasn't, we're kind of still up in the air and kind of figuring out like what full day kindergarten is going to look like here in Monroe. There was a suggestion of looking at surrounding areas and developing like a tuition agreement, I guess we would say, right? To establish a full day program for Monroe students. I don't know that any of us were very much in love with that idea. But I know that we are having ongoing discussions and trying to explore all options and all avenues. This isn't a mandate that's going to be implemented, next year, like for this coming school year, but it's something that the state is looking to have established so that ultimately everybody will have full day kindergarten. Basically.
Right. And I think that, oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I spoke to Sharon Miller, who's the president of Middlesex County, and she knows of our dilemma with one of the 5 districts. She's supposed to send me some information. She doesn't know what district it is, but she said they had a pop-up building put in and for kindergarten, and they charged $1,700 per child per month. I think she said and then I had to get off and I had a phone call, but she's going to send me the information. And it worked out. The only problem was this district had to just every year keep making sure that more kids kept coming. So they had to feed into their program in order to keep getting the money.
Did you say 1,700 per month per child?
1,700. I thought that's what, yes.
That's
But she's sending me the information. Like I said, our conversation was cut off. When I get it, she said it was a pop-up building that they put on one of their sites that had room to put one on, and whatever district it was, but I'll get it from her and I'll let you know.
I just know having, kids that are around this age level that, that's more than preschool, like the, daycare preschool, which would usually go from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So, but I think that, that's sort of similar to what we do right now with ECE. I know like
Right.
it's despite like we all would like to have full day kindergarten, but I also, I have my youngest in there right now. ECE is a fantastic alternative while we need that alternative. I think, the other suggestion that had come was also the partnering with, some of the private daycares in the area. I'd be curious to know, you know, how much space there is. Like, we don't have as many in town. I know there's a couple in surrounding towns as well. But I think, once we have the demographers report that, we approve and looking at our numbers at that level to see where they'll be for the next 5 years, to know like how much we would need in additional space, then we can look at the logistics of what type of space is it that, we don't have that we would need, because some of
Right.
it
Yeah.
requires the different things.
So if I may, we've been having a lot of conversations, myself, Dr. Lehman, Mr. Tague, Ms. Allen, Mr. Meralda, to see, if moving forward, and of course, this would be a conversation for the full board, to be a conversation with BGTNS, finance, and so forth. So if the conversation would transpire of a referendum moving forward, then the conversation would have to be that we then could perhaps bring in trailers for maybe the Brookside area. We started to have this conversation. Katie was there, because then we can legitimately say to the state, this is our short-term fix, trailers, because our ultimate, because trailers cannot be a forever fix. Our long-term goal would then be to build on. Where would we build on? Perhaps, we build on, maybe, we'd have to build onto Barkley Brook, but maybe the trailers would go into Brookside. So we're already starting to have these conversations. And you did make a good comment, Kate. It is all about the demographer's report, which we'd like to report out. We believe we'll be able to report out during BGTNS in March. There were some changes that had to go back and forth when we received it. So that would be the next conversation. And, we're still going to continue to look to see if there's any money out there for us. But, we're thinking, maybe that's what we have to do. And then look at what we currently have at Oak Tree, and look at, once of course we take back the Mill Lake Annex, which is what we know it to be called for many, many, many years. And then we would have the ECE anymore. So we're already starting to move forward in that direction with these conversations.
Okay, great. Yeah, I did a little bit of research on the remaining districts, right as we were having the meeting, just to sort of see like what they've done. And I know we've had many, unsuccessful referendums in the last few years, but I think, the last time that we asked our community about kindergarten, which was really more of just like a, would you like to see it? And not necessarily like a full referendum plan, was, over a decade ago. And I think that times have changed a lot since then. And so that's what a lot of the districts that don't have it either have done or are currently doing. Haddonfield and Camden was one of them. They just passed it on their December 2024 referendum. Westfield, which I feel like in a lot of ways we've been very similar to, they are having a referendum for full day kindergarten this spring. And then Hillsborough, actually, because I had reached out to the boards of ed in these districts to kind of get an idea. They had a failed referendum, and so they're hoping to add it within the next few years. But they've also been dealing with a loss of funding, which we sort of heard about when we went for the hearings for the funding formula. But it's definitely a priority. We saw that when we were doing the strategic plan, that it's something that we really want to see. So I appreciate all the work that is being done. I think we all can do that, say that, we know that we want it there, and we know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So thank you to everyone who is trying to make it happen.
Dr. Chanley, is there any way that you could mention that at the meeting so that people will know that we're doing something here every month?
Board
You know
meeting?
what I'm saying? Or is that at the next
At the board
meeting? Can you mention that?
Certainly. And so at the board meeting, when I do my superintendent's report, I'll be
Yes,
happy to report
yeah,
out.
so people know
100%.
that you're
Absolutely.
actually working on it, and that we're
Yes.
actually working on it. I think keeping them abreast of what's going on instead of
Sure.
just, not saying anything to them would be better.
I think that's excellent. I mean, we can't, of course, provide details, but we can provide our thought process. And we know
Right.
that we know that we have 3 current buildings, where we would put our full day kindergarten. We know that 2 of the buildings would need, one of the buildings which would be Mill Lake, we would utilize the annex, so there would be no need for any type of construction. But we know that Buckley Brook is the area in which we need construction, but perhaps we'd utilize trailers at Brookside and maybe do some configuration
Right.
moving. And, redistricting is, we're not saying we're redistricting, but it's always a conversation that we need to have. But the demographers report, which we are very excited about, really is going to drive a lot of this. And I absolutely agree with you, Gail. I'd be happy to include that as part of my superintendent's report and give some details so people can hone in on exactly what it is we're doing moving forward.
Right.
And then, of course, we can give more particulars during our BGTNS meeting when we do the demographers report in
Right.
March. Absolutely.
Right, because then the community will know, well, look, they're working on it. Dr. Chamley said this and the
Absolutely.
BGT said that. And so they're going to be waiting for more information as we go along. And we need a referendum. And Citizens Advisory Committee can be out there to
Yeah, that's going to
Dr.
be.
Lehman.
Yes,
They can use the
yes.
Citizens Advisory Committee to get out into the community. So
That was actually going to be my question.
I think it's a good time for a referendum.
Because I know we, it's kind of come up, but I also know that, you have to get documents within a certain time period and in order to put that on something. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think we've all agreed that, like, if we can get it on a November ballot, so there's no additional cost, that's, the
Right.
route
Yes.
to go. Is that a possibility?
Yes.
At this point
So
for November?
I'll be happy to share a little bit more, since, Gail's right. We should share as much information as we can. So the conversations that we've been having with Mr. Tague, because he is the one that really has a very good understanding of the deadlines and the dates and what we need to do. So we're in a position now where we're starting this conversation. We're starting to think a little bit out of the box of things that we can do. So realistically, we definitely would want November. So November of 2026, because November 2025 is now. And, our budget's already done, because if we go with trailers, that has to become in your operating budget. So if we go with trailers, that becomes part of your operating budget. We've already shared our budget. Of course, we're going to have our March 17th. I'm doing it off the top of my head. So
17th, yes.
Yes. So that would have, so our goal would be to get all of our ducks in a row. We have to do a design study that is required, with, perhaps the IG group that we've utilized in the past. There's a lot of things that have to go in. So very realistic would be November of 2026, because it's very important to note that this November, which is literally around the corner, trailers have to go in your operating budget, and our budget fight, which we did early, knowing that we would not have to go out for another budget vote. We would not be able to put the cost of those trailers in there, nor do we even know what they are. I mean, we're at a point where we have to do. So I would think that having kindergarten, let me say 2 things. This is all speculation. All speculation. This is conversation. Nothing is written in stone. We've made no decisions. We do not make decisions in isolation. We have to bring it to all the committees and the board. But just in conversation, our goal would be to have conversation, full-time kindergarten by utilization of trailers, all speculation. I'm not talking about a referendum, anything being built. We would love to see that happen September of 2026, the actual full-day kindergarten. As far as going out for a referendum, I see you're a little perplexed, but it's very simple. The trailers and reorganization, reallocation, redistricting, we don't know, would be how we would get in full-day kindergarten without a referendum. The
Right.
referendum is the long-term solution. The trailers are the short-term solution. So
Okay.
can that be something that we can do September 2026? Yes, because the trailers would then have to be in that budget. And as far as going out for a referendum, we would not want to put it anywhere else but November, because it saves us that 85,000, whatever it might be.
Right.
But that could not be this November, because of all the deadlines that's involved and all the data. And like we said, everything has to go to the state. That would be, our goal would be to look to see if we could put it on the November election for a referendum of 2026. But that doesn't mean you can't start kindergarten at the same time if we're utilizing different options.
Right.
So just really quick to kind of, like, I guess, bring us back to what the Capital Watch we were looking at, where this sort of came up. I was sort of thinking when you had mentioned that, because right now the questions on a November ballot, if it's a spending, like, there's a difference, right? Because there's the additional spending proposals, right, which, like, we used to call second questions, and then there's referendums. So with an additional spending question, right now, if you did it in November, it would have to be for programs that you already currently have, which, you know,
Right. We're not talking about that. We're
right.
not talking about additional question at all. We're talking about moving forward and having and not we won't be able to do anything in September, the following September, making the cost, and we're not saying we can do it. We haven't looked at it. It's next year's budget. Making the cost part of our operating budget.
Right. I guess my question was going to be if, you know, we could discuss without the legislator, because the legislators, there we go, because, you know, that had that bill that would allow us to do things for a following year had stalled in the Senate. It passed in the Assembly already. Would that be another option? Because it doesn't require the same amount of documentation and things that a referendum would.
I couldn't answer that because that would be a question that I could not answer by myself, and I'm sure Adam would agree with this. That would be a question that would have to be answered based upon also timing. You know, it's not just money; it's doing it right, having the staff, having the ability to look at how we're going to do the buildings. Because remember, right now we have no
Put
space.
TV on mute.
How do you make space? So I wouldn't want to be able to answer. So it's not just money. I think if you allow us the opportunity to talk this through, and like Gail said, I'll mention it during the board meeting, and then we can tease this out and have a little bit more conversation about the bulk of it, about the foundation, the nitty gritty, come the next BG&T meeting. So like the conversations we're having is it's not just we decided to have full day kindergarten, this is how it works.
Right.
You know, there is a design study that we have to look at. You know, if we go with trailers, what does that mean? We can't, right now we can't fit. We cannot fit without trailers. Cannot fit. It's impossible. You cannot fit in Barkley Brook. That's a fact. Adam, give me a thumbs up. That's a fact, right? Cannot fit in Barkley Brook, right? So that we know definitely can't.
Barkley Brook is going to be the
sticking
area where
point.
we have, it's definitely the sticking point.
100%. So
I think in terms of, and to kind of piggyback what Ms. Fabiano was talking about, a takeaway for from the meeting was the state and the legislators were committed to taking the districts that don't have full day K across the finish line. I think that's what that's the word they used. And if we have a design study that we need to do, if we have costs associated with us getting across the finish line, I think those become things we ask, right? Direct things we can ask the state to help us get across the finish line.
Okay.
Because the takeaway from the meeting also was, you know, we're not going to get $25 million more in state aid. They didn't say that directly, but they alluded to that fact. So one thing I took away is whatever we need to get across the finish line, if we have a specific design study that's going to cost, say, $100,000, or we have another associated cost, those are the things we could say, hey, this is something that you can help us get across the finish line in terms of getting this. So it's just, it's another kind of connection, another way to ask. And they offered, you know, they basically said, we are committed to helping the rest of the districts, Monroe included, get this done. They spoke to working with some legislative pieces that they could do if it meant developing partnerships and stuff. But we can leverage it and say, hey, these are the expenses that it's going to cost to get us across the finish line. There's our ask, right?
Right.
So that was kind of my takeaway. Again, it was a meeting that I was looking forward to having. I think we had some conversations. I was grateful to have the meeting with with everyone. But that was my takeaway is what can we leverage their willingness to help us get across the finish line, and how can we take advantage of that? And you know, to me, that's the financial expense with getting this off the ground.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to say, which I think is important, is at no time would it be a recommendation for kindergarten to go in trailers. Let me just make that very clear. When we say trailers, there are other ways of looking at things. You know, perhaps you put the trailers on Brookside, and perhaps it's the fifth graders. Perhaps. No kindergarten children will be in a trailer. There is no conversation or recommendation in any way, shape, or form that's going to happen. I want to make sure that is not misconstrued to the public. I think it's very important. But it's just that we realize that we can't, a referendum, even if we're fortunate enough to pass a referendum, can't happen overnight. And the trailers can be our temporary fix. That's why they're called temporary classroom units, TCUs, temporary classroom units, to get us to where we need to be. We're very passionate, and we're moving in that direction. And I'll be happy to elaborate more this, you know, next week at the board meeting. I think that's great. But I want to make sure I make that statement so that you have my proxy to say Dr. Trailing never said that. There will be no children no kindergarten children in a trailer.
I don't know. I know those middle school kids love the trailer, so but
They love 'em.
I do appreciate that you clarify.
And I like Adam's line to get to the finish line.
Mhm.
I think that's really good that we're out of the paddock and we're starting down that, whatever it is when they race the racetrack, and we're getting to the finish line. I like that. So
Yeah.
thank you, Adam.
Mhm. All right. Anything else on that? Dr. Peck, I'm actually curious because this had come up with Jamesburg right now. Are you guys pretty much at capacity in your buildings that from what you know? Because I remember there was a brief discussion about something regarding that.
I would have to check, but I do think we are pretty full. So
Right.
I
Okay.
I could get clarification. Both my kids are at middle school now, so I haven't been hanging around the elementary as much, but
Mhm.
I believe we are pretty close to capacity.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Just really quick, like going through the other bills that are here. The legislature, I can't keep that straight tonight, my God. They just sort of went back into business again. I looked up to see when like the future meetings are for some of their committees on the education, and I didn't really see anything yet. But one thing I know that was passed, which I think they brought up at our county meeting, is if you plan to run for a seat, you need additional signatures on your petition.
Mhm.
I think it's 25 now instead of 10.
25. Yep.
And then let's see, just kind of going through this. I don't know, were there any other bills that anyone heard of or read on here that what they wanted to mention at all? I do know, I'll just answer my own question. The S3917 did move forward from this, I believe, the Senate Education Committee. However, the part regarding the cap with the 7% was removed from the bill. So it's still looking at, really from what we were told, a more transparent process is the primary focus of the bill, so that districts are getting more time in order to make their budgets, and then that any taxpayer can go online and sort of see how districts are receiving their funding and how that works. And then the other part that I found interesting from Senator Gopal about the bill was that he mentioned the extraordinary aid for especially like out of districts. His goal is that 100% of the costs would be covered by the state. And he said as of right now 60% is covered by the state for every district, which sounded, I wasn't sure if that's exactly what we get. It was a minimum of 60% that's covered by state funding. And then he said his goal is to get it to 100%, and that this bill would hopefully start getting us in the right direction.
Well, he mentioned anything that one child is $40,000 with special ed, and what he's trying to push is 70 to 80% back to the district, anything over the 40,000, and then eventually, like you just said, Kate, he wants to see 100% back to the district.
Mhm.
That's what I heard.
Right. Yeah, I think that amount was like the minimum spending threshold or something along.
Right. And what was the bill that went through the Senate Education, whatever, but did not go to the next one he was telling us about? Is that S3197?
Yeah, that's still all in the Senate.
3917, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right. So I think he had mentioned that he spoke with his assembly people counterparts about the bill, but they have not brought it up yet.
Yeah, it's stuck.
Unless it
Senate,
happens.
it was moved to the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Oh, okay. I knew it went through the Senate Education, but then it went to the next one.
Yeah, it
Maybe,
was
okay.
introduced in the Senate Education Committee. It completed its second read and was referred to the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Okay. All right.
Regarding the cell phone law, is there anything as a district that we need to that we're not doing that has to be done? Because that was signed, I believe, correct?
I think they said that, he's going to try to push it through. And Senator Gopal said the districts, he was going to work with districts to give us funding to take care of the process. But everybody mentioned that, the kids can't be on the cell phone, but what about the people that come into the schools, the teachers, so it's a hard informational session right now. I think it's early, and I don't think it's going to, it should be out soon. Am I wrong? That's what I understood it to be.
I'm trying to remember. I felt like there was something that had passed recently about it, but I can't find it off the top of my head. So
Yeah, I just thought it was in like the really late stages of talking about it, but it's definitely something that he wants put through in the state of New Jersey. But I think it's up to each district on how they would address it in their district. Because somebody mentioned, Dr. Lehman or somebody mentioned that one of the art classes, the children actually use their cell phones for some of the classwork. So you'd have to set up a policy that would allow for that in that classroom, but not in another one. But I know somebody mentioned it somewhere along the line.
That's the legislation that you're talking about, Gail. It's a
Oh.
policy. It's a cell phone and social media policy to be developed by the DOE and adopted in schools.
Right.
That
But
was
we can adjust it according to how we want it, right, Katie, or no?
I mean, I guess it would depend on if it's a mandate or not and what
Right.
it looks like coming from the state.
You guys may
Yeah.
be interested to know that since that address on that topic, I have actually been approached by two separate companies that claim to provide geofencing technologies to lock down certain elements of personal devices while on property of the district. Now, I mean, I think that this is going to be a very interesting debate because I could rattle off 7 classes right now that would have an application for the use of the personal device that we are currently teaching.
Right.
Again, that's at the high school, and then the feedback that we've gotten, and because this has been discussed in some of my cohorts outside of the district amongst principals, is the biggest feedback we get from parents is they want that access to their children. And that it's going to be interesting to see how this is litigated in the public.
Right.
But to the point is, it is interesting to see that there's already been a private product solution that is already cooking for this type of conundrum.
right, so I just looked it up. It passed in the Senate. So it's in the Assembly. Seems to be common. But it's just a cell phone and social media policy. Right. Which is, if anyone's keeping track, S3695. All right. I think that's enough legislature talk. Anybody else have anything on that topic they wanted to talk about? All right, so we will move ahead. So the next thing I wanted to sort of just discuss briefly is our district advocacy website. I also did want to just share, I had heard from a board member in a surrounding district that they had someone come up at their podium and actually use Monroe as an example of advocacy and how much we do in our district to fight for our district. And so I did want to share that, which I think, board member, like president and past boards and administration, I think, we all, can share in that accolades. But it said, Monroe's had people fighting for these things for years. Why are we not being given information? They even have a committee for it. They have a website for it. And so I did just want to share that a little bit. So good job, everybody. And then I also just wanted to, I guess, look at our current advocacy website, which I know, Mr. Moraldo, you took some time to put this together. I think it was last year, maybe, or the year before, it was around that time. And just seeing if there's anything that we feel like we should add to it or modify. I know we've been discussing the letter, but aside from the letter, because that's sort of its own topic, is there anything else we wanted to talk about?
One of the when we first set that site up, we we've modified it several times first, but I kind of had this idea of where, like, at the top would be kind of more organic, where we would talk about like current area, even just by calling them out. What are our current areas of focus, right? And even if they're just very broad, like, funding, obviously, full day kindergarten, capital hurdles, right? And then
like maybe like the bottom portion of it would be almost like a repository of resources, sample letters,
Mhm.
and even maybe just like a memorialization of topics that we've looked at. Um, you know, what we could do if you're looking to like keep it fresh and more timely, you know, we could probably work something out that after you guys, or I'm sorry, after this committee reports out at the board, you know, when you give your committee reports, you know, maybe we take something, maybe we like pull something out of that and we put that out on the advocacy website, so just so people can kind of see where we're at any given time. Because I thought about this when I saw the agenda, and it kind of reminded me of what the original focus of the site was to be, and you know, the idea would be is as we enjoy our successes in the future, we would move on to other advocacy topics, hopefully.
Right.
And that, but I didn't want to like lose sight of what we had advocated for historically. So it almost like would work like a feed, maybe.
Right.
But I don't know. That was just kind of the initial thought I had when I saw the agenda item.
Mm. I'm trying not to talk too much. It's hard. So, you know, I like that idea, and I like that you can sort of see where we came from and what we're doing now. And then, you know, I like the idea of having, you know, several topics on there. Obviously, aid is always very much in our mind, but I think looking at the other things that we need as well are good, because you never know, a solution might come for something else that isn't necessarily state aid that, you know, somebody sees and, you know, can work to advocate for and find a solution for. I did notice when we went to the new website, which it was probably on the old website, but it just became more prevalent, that there's also a link to the Fight for Fair funding, which was, I guess, a lot of this stuff was done in 2017. So it's under the same area of the district information. And so I didn't know if we wanted to sort of consolidate what's on there with what's on the advocacy website, because it's letter to Senator Greenstein, urgent request for additional funding. Please sign our petition requesting additional state aid. And then stuff from the Senate hearings on state aid. So, which I found really interesting to read, because, you know, it shows you that as much as we've done, it's, you know, very
But no,
similar
but
to what we're doing.
you're 100% right. That would be, in my opinion, that would be something that we would kind of, keep on that advocacy, because it is a good point of reference and context, and you know, maybe even a point of discontent, because when you see how long we've been dealing with this. But you know, the other thing is we've used, not necessarily, I don't know if we even called it that, advocacy, but that also could become a place for information if we were, again, not necessarily, you know, depending on how things develop, but that would be a place where we would go and potentially share information about any efforts, whether they be a vote or, you know, just general support for any type of question that we may put forth in the future.
Yeah. I like the fact that other districts are looking to what we're doing and saying, you know, we'd like to see that too. I think that that's always a, you know, a sign that we're doing something right.
Well, since you're bragging, I have received several comments that our strategic planning website was awfully nice as well. So,
Mhm. Oh, by the way, is that on our website now?
yeah, so that was my fault. So when we updated the strategic plan, or when we presented it to the board and the public, what we did was we kind of housed that link on the front page of all of our sites, and then when we migrated it over, we never put it permanently on that. But that has all been updated, and it should be up to date at this point. If not, if it has been updated yet, the directive has been issued. So
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, someone asked me where they could find it. I'm like, oh, right here. And they're like, oh, wait, no. So, but all the other information is still there, so they can
Yeah.
still see a lot of what was discussed. But again, like that also, I like, you know, people have said they like the action plan and stuff like that was on there, and that it's all available.
Well, and that's something that we could probably look at. And when we were kicking around ideas for future agenda items for CAC, you know, we're about half a year in to the presentation and the, you know, quote unquote approval, endorsement, whatever you want to call it. It might be worth taking a look at it, because, you know, we have been pretty you know, we've made some moves. We've continued our advocacy. We've actually made some gains in our advocacy, whether they were productive or not. You know, we could talk about that, but we are certainly more present with our state leaders than we have been. And that was one of the things that we had outlined as important in our strategic plan. You know, we are making baby steps towards full day early childhood, and that was something that we had talked about. We're trying to address the capital hurdles both internally and externally. So it might be worth revisiting with the committee in future meetings, just to kind of let them know, you know, we made a pledge to the community that we would update this document on our progress, and, you know, we set that document up to do so. So I think it would be worth revisiting. And that was one of the feedback I remember school boards used to say, is that a lot of people will set it and forget it. And, you know, I think that to keep it fresh on people's minds, it might be worth looking at again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the more information, Zach, that you keep up there, and also tell that committee, when we go to each meeting and we go into something else, we just keep reminding them again, like, you know, when repetition, they say, is good for the mind. I mean, when I was a kid, we repeated the times tables up and down the rows, and now you get kids that can't even do cashier. So if you keep repeating to the CAC committee, eventually it'll lead up to helping us with a referendum, because they'll see along the way that we have kept them abreast of everything going on. So I like that.
And you know, Dr. Lehman, I believe in his presentation, in his portion of the presentation, referred to it at the strategic plan as our North Star.
Yes.
You know, and I think showing up in the public and say, oh yeah, we're talking about this referendum, rather than, hey, remember this thing we were talking about a couple of years ago that we've been working towards this. Here's what we've done properly with the community, full transparency. And now it's time for us to, you know, again, I'm being presumptive, but you know, that it's my understanding that that was the intent of the strategic plan. And you know, we are 6 months in, so it'd be worth maybe taking 6 or maybe 5 or 6.
Definitely.
I think it's also worthy to note too, as far as our advocacy goes, right? Monroe has been advocating for a very, very long time, because we've always kind of gotten the short end of the stick as far as funding goes, right? So advocacy has long been the name of our game here. And so it's only been until recently where more of our surrounding areas are starting to feel the need that they need to advocate more. So it's unfortunate that we have kind of had to be the trailblazer for what advocacy looks like, but you know, we are, because we've been doing it for so long. So now people are, like Kate said, starting to turn to us, and you know, what we are sharing with the community, and that's on our website to, you know, try to get things done to make things a little bit better. So yeah, that was just my thoughts.
Along those lines, the same board member who shared with me that, you know, Monroe came up in their public forum also had asked me if we do anything like regarding sponsorships and partnerships, which, you know, I know that's something that Mr. Monroe, you've worked on a lot in the last, you know, couple of years. And so I said, you know, we definitely have had some success with it. And I said, so she had asked for information about it. So I tried to see if I could find anything that was on our website. But I didn't really see, other than just if you're interested to email. Is that anything that we have shared, like more documented information about? And I guess if it's not, is there a reason that we're not sharing more about it? Because I know you sort of tailor it based on what the person is bringing to the table, but
So as far as making the community aware of opportunities for sponsorship, or
yeah, so like if somebody, you know, went to the advocacy website, like I know you've talked about putting other things on there that we know we need, and said, hey, I would love to find a way to help support the district with additional bleachers for the, you know, just using this as an example, you know, because they've gone to home games and seen how crowded it is, you know, is there something I can do to help support the district in that regard? Like, obviously that's a much bigger project than, you know, I feel like what we've seen from, you know, so far, but I also know like there have been major companies in other towns that have, you know, supported a new science wing at a high school or things like that. Just, I guess, the idea of information being there to sort of help fulfill any of our potential needs, as well as if someone wants to do something smaller, is that information available for them to get off of the website?
yeah, so Most of our inquiry or most of our partnerships are formed kind of organically throughout the community. We will do some cold calling or some version of that throughout the year. Are you suggesting like almost like an Amazon wish list of items and see who wants to?
That would be fun. But
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking that like I guess a combination of what you mentioned before with the advocacy as well as just information, because I feel like there are those people where like you'll have that, you sort of you form it organically. But I feel like sometimes people don't necessarily take that first step, but if the information is right there for them, they might be more likely to act on it. Like, I mean, I know like for me, a lot of times I might be more likely to sign up for something where I can just pay right online instead of having to send a check or bring, something like that. So sort of the information is there for them to move forward instead of having to reach out to get it, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I mean, we absolutely could make information more accessible. But I will say that we do we take a very methodical and purposeful approach to forming our partnerships because we have to make sure that all of our partnerships align with the district's values and some of our programmatic goals. So there is a certain level of gatekeeping that takes place. But we certainly don't want to turn anyone away. So we could that could be something that could very easily be accomplished through just web presence and more open opportunity, discussion about how people could reach out. But we do work out deals pretty regularly. Most of them, sometimes they're smaller and more program driven and aligned, and we like that. But no, we haven't engaged in anyone or what you call like a big box organization or some major companies yet. We would certainly take their calls. Franchises and organizations like that tend to be a little more troublesome, and we start to lose autonomy when we enter into agreements with them, which is not something we're currently comfortable with. But we're obviously open to all ideas that are going to help pump some capital into this place. So,
Has there been anything with like, I guess like naming rights, if you would? Has that discussion ever come up with anybody?
we've offered it as part of as a deal point before. We have some programmatic naming right agreements in place, but not necessarily any facility naming rights. In fact, I may be mistaken. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I actually think we may have a policy prohibiting naming rights of facility, of school buildings. I don't know necessarily about athletic facilities, but I would have to check on that.
Right, because I mean, I know we have certain parts of our like the performing arts center at the middle school is, but that's not necessarily because of funds, unless this was before my time. So
I just know that when we've attempted to memorialize things, it's been troublesome. So,
right. Okay. Anybody else have anything? All right. We can, sort of skip over the current advocacy letter for stakeholders. I know we were going to talk about that in the CAC, but because of the weather, we had to postpone that meeting. But I would love, like, if we can get a final version of that, can we, I guess, make ourselves a goal of having it for the March meeting so that we can, bring it to the March board meeting. I don't think it actually technically has to be approved, but I think it's always nice to bring it to the full board to make sure we get everybody's, approval, if you would. Even if it's not formal approval, at least everyone's in agreement with what's there.
Kate, some of the CAC members have responded to the letter that Zach sent them all for any kind of information. And I talked to Dr. Lehman the other day and asked that, canceling the meeting, but also telling them that we will, the last minute items that you would have, questions or, things you want to add or things like that to the letter, because it's going to be finalized. I'm not letting this drag out anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to be finalized as is with the last minute comments, and then it's going to go out. So,
right. I know I had sent something, I think it was right after last month's meeting as well. It was because it was right before I think we were going to the hearings and
Right,
stuff like
right.
that. So if we can just sort of compile that for, a final version of it
Yep.
forward. I agree with you, Gail. I would love to get it done. I know like it took us a while to get it out the first time. And I would, and it's taken us a while this time, and I know we want to do it right, but I feel like we could keep going back each month and
Yeah.
finding something and, thinking of another improvement, but ultimately something is better and we can always tweak it, I guess, if we
Right.
need it.
No, we need, I agree. We need to get something out through the people in that meeting out immediately at the March meeting. Yes.
Which sort of goes right into the next topic, which is the upcoming state hearings and budget testimonies. There's no information on this yet that I've seen, but I know that usually within the next month is when those come out. For where we'll get our state aid numbers, and there's the budget address by the governor at the end of this month, and then the hearings I think were usually in that March and April period. So it might start happening before our March committee meetings, and so I sort of just wanted to talk about if there's anything we want to do as a board to get a larger presence at any of these. I feel like the funding hearings were more about the funding formula itself, but for these, we might want to look at like the specific things, capital projects that we need, because those are more like what can we add to the budget that's not necessarily a systemic change, if you would.
Kate, when I spoke at the Trenton hearing, Old Bridge District, they had a little minibus and they had about 10 or 12 people there. So if you want to come in mass, you might want to think about doing that.
Right.
So that they see how much Monroe is, interested in all that stuff. But every time somebody got up, they said so-and-so from Old Bridge, so-and-so from Old Bridge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was tons from Old Bridge. So we could do something like that if it can be okayed, but I don't know if we can do that.
It may be a good opportunity too to bring this up at CAC.
Yes.
Maybe kind of develop like a working document of a list of important topics to be addressed at the budget hearings. And if anyone is interested in testifying, obviously we want to certainly make the committee aware. But if we can make the community aware when the like we did with the funding hearings, we shared the link. But sharing when it's posted to, if we could put it on our Facebook page or somewhere, saying, that if you'd like to testify at the budget hearings, these are the dates, here's the links. And then also we can direct them to this document, that we have collectively created to help give them some talking points.
Right.
I think that could also be helpful.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, sounds good. I know it's 8 o'clock, so we're just about done. I really would like us to move forward with the bagels with the board idea, Katie. I feel like we've been discussing this since we started on this committee, and we've both been on the committee the entire time. And so I don't know what our best way is to move forward with this, but I would like to make it a goal of our committee. Like it was on our goals actually, right? So whatever we can do, whether it's reaching out to various communities to see if they'd be interested in hosting us, and doing it the way we discussed, where, it's really just listening to what they have to say. And with, maybe not with the winter weather, but like, I think we should try to maybe start doing more of that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing to start up for the spring. Once the weather gets nicer,
Mhm.
we should, definitely start getting that.
Right.
We can speak with Adam, our lawyer, to make sure that we follow all of the proper rules and procedures and figure out what exactly it will look like. Maybe this can come back up next month for Lace.
Okay, so I guess whatever we need to do so that next month we can move forward with it.
I can see if we can have some kind of forum at this. I have a meeting March 11th with the Commission on Aging, and ask Nancy, the director, if we can use the senior center for a forum with a panel and have people come and ask questions or whatever they want to do. Would you like something like that?
Sure. I think that would definitely be nice. And then we get all the community, like it's not just one community, if you would,
Right.
the town in general.
Right.
But yeah, I guess talk to Mr. Weiss, and then we can figure out, maybe brainstorm ideas of who we can reach out to next month and then move forward with it.
Okay.
Following
Sounds good.
procedure.
I'll ask her in March or I'll call her.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so we are 2 minutes over. Sorry, Ms. Alvarez, 'cause I know you're waiting for policy, and I'm on there too, so I have to, hey guys, we have to leave and then come back, right? Okay, sounds good.
Good night, everybody. Be safe with the weather.
Yes, everyone
You
be
as well.
safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
All right, bye.
Good night.